Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature authors, successful business leaders, top law firm companies, green energy companies, and more. Today, we're joined by a leader in the mentorship and leadership field, best-selling author and host of the world's largest and fastest-growing podcast devoted to leadership development, On Leadership with Scott Miller, and the author of his latest book, The Ultimate Guide to Great Mentorship. Scott Miller, welcome to the show, Scott.
Matt, thank you for the spotlight, the platform. Looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. Before we get too far into it, a quick word from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Cyberlinks is a complete technology solution provider that ensures your business not only has the most reliable and professional IT service, but also has the right cybersecurity solution to ensure your business stays productive and safe. Thanks, Cyberlinks, for your sponsorship. And now back to our show. Scott, can't thank you enough for coming on the show. Huge fan of your work. Love your podcast. And also congratulations on 5 years and 260 episodes of on leadership. That's fantastic. Congratulations.
I appreciate that. We actually have about 60 episodes taped and in the can, as we've taped over 300. And we just this week moved from releasing the weekly podcast like yours, audio and video, now to releasing 2 episodes a week. So our episodes will air on Tuesdays and Fridays. So we'll move up to about 105 or so episodes a year.
Wow.
Looking forward to that.
That's fantastic. You know, I was going to mention that we had a guest on our show that I think would be a great guest for you, Atif Rafiq. He wrote a great book. It made the Wall Street Journal bestseller list last week. I think he'd be great on your show, but with so many in the can, you're clearly not, hurting for any guests. In fact, with some of your guests have been fantastic. The Chris Voss episode, which you just dropped, that was really great.
Nice.
You just had tons. So looking forward to seeing the next 60 that you got in the can there.
We got some great ones coming up. Tony Robbins, Brene Brown, Bill Gates. We've got a really great list coming up. Honored. Like you, my strategy is just to keep going, right? Just to do my best to take a less center seat in the podcast and ask good questions and let the guest bring their expertise to our listeners and viewers. Simple strategy. Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. Now, it's surprisingly fun. We started out, originally just kind of giving a platform to our guests, who just happen to be like clients of our company, because it made a lot of sense and it seemed like they kind of needed it and it'd be a great thing for them. And man, I tell you, it's just so much fun doing the podcast that I'm just having a blast with it. It's fun. And then we get to talk to guys like you. Come on, forget about it. This is fantastic.
It's my honor.
Let me ask you, your new book, which I thought was great, a super easy read, and really insightful. Can you, for those who are less fortunate and haven't had the chance to get it, because it just recently came out, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So I spent my entire career, 30 years in the leadership development industry, worked for FranklinCovey as the CMO for a decade. In that 30 years was Dr. Covey's, kind of chief liaison with his business development side. Dr. Covey, of course, wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I spent 24 years in the firm. And when I retired from the company in good standing, I still advise FranklinCovey. I started to spend more time writing and speaking. I've authored and released 6 books in the last 5 years. Don't do that. And built a large speaking career around leadership, marketing, careers, have 3 books coming out in the next year and a half. Don't do that. But this book is kind of like my baby, because whenever someone asks me, what are all of the podcast guests have in common? I also, up until recently, hosted a weekly program on iHeartRadio. It was a guest interview program about great life, great career. What all these guests have in common is they all have had a mentor in life. They had a series of mentors that were transition figures in their lives that, gave them great feedback, steered them properly, listened, validated, pushed back on them, stopped them outright, metaphorically pulled the keys out of the ignition and said, no, we're going for a walk. That's crazy town. And so I wrote this book called The Ultimate Guide to Great Mentorship. It's a very practical, easy, fast read, as you mentioned. I don't write seminal books like Good to Great or Built to Last. Snoozer. I'm kidding. Jim Collins is a genius. I've interviewed him. I know him actually fairly well. This is a very easy book that if you're going to mentor people, I think there are 13 roles minimally that mentors play. Not every call, not every Starbucks meeting, not every role will you play all the time. But I wrote this to really give mentors a better roadmap because I don't think because you're a great leader means you're a great mentor. And a lot of the skills that make you a great mentor don't always translate or make you a great leader don't always translate into making you a great mentor. You have to unwind some things. And most people who are mentors, most of them are likely leaders inside organizations. Not always, but mostly.
I love that. And I think what I find really interesting is you take guys like Tony Robbins, Dale Carnegie, Stephen Covey, all of them did basically what you did with this book. You know, they take all of these experiences, all these great leaders, all these great things, and they distill down these things that they have in common. And you get these great nuggets that otherwise, how else are you going to get it? You're not going to get. Who gets the opportunity to interview all these people, to talk to? Most people don't. You can't get access to these people because they're busy doing, being successful, being them. And so when guys like you do it, and so thank you from the community. I mean, these things are they're real gems. When you get your hands on it, you're like, oh, and you do a great job of kind of breaking that down. And it's 13 roles, and that's, as you point out, that's a large number, but at the same time, it was a challenge for you to get down there. It wasn't the magical 7, right?
Someone took the 7.
Yeah. So what are you going to do, right?
What are you going to do?
Are there any in particular that kind of resonate with you, the mentor roles that you think are most valuable or just kind of resonate with you most?
Well, obviously, I think all 13 have value. Very quickly, so your listening and viewing audience has some context. Let me run through the 13 roles and I'll pick out a couple and maybe dive deeper in. Number 1 is the revealer. Number 2 is the boundary setter. Number 3, the absorber. Number 4, the questioner. And then the challenger, the validator, the navigator, the flagger, the distiller, the activator, the connector, and the closer. Now, again, role 2 isn't for meeting 2, and role 7 is for mentor meeting 7. Mentorship usually happens in a formal setting. I think 80% of the Fortune 5000 have mentor initiatives. It's usually putting a more junior rising person with a more senior established person, but not always. Oftentimes, they're in prescribed sessions, once a month for 40 minutes or twice a month for 60 minutes. But lots of times, there are entrepreneurial settings where you mentor. I also don't think you have to know your mentor. I think some of my greatest mentors in life, people that I never met before. In fact, my biggest mentor in life was a man named Bruce Williams. He was a very famous radio talk show host in the 80s, long before Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity and Dave Ramsey. He was a business entrepreneur that I listened to for years at nighttime when most of my teenage friends were listening to, NXS and Cyndi Lauper. I was the nerd in bed listening to a guy talk about ROI and credit scores and when to use an attorney at closing for your home and that kind of stuff. And it launched me into a great career, but I never met Bruce Williams. He never met me, and he died having no idea I was alive. And he's my biggest mentor in life today. My point is redefine what mentorship looks like in your life. Now, as it relates to the roles, I'm passionate about a lot of them. Number 2, the boundary setter. I think it's very important that as a mentor, when you are entering into a mentee-mentor relationship, that you, with some level of courage and diplomacy, set some boundaries. It might go something like this. Let's assume wrongly that I was going to mentor Matt on anything. I can assure you it would be the other way around, people. But let's just say Matt was naive enough to conscript me as his mentor. I might say, hey, Matt, this is our first session. It's been nice getting to know you, your personality, your goals, what you're trying to accomplish. Very excited to hear that your lifelong goal has been to become a patent attorney. That's rare, but I hope you crush it, and let's figure out how to become a patent attorney. Sometimes it might be, Matt, you're thinking of being a chiropractor or an orthopedic surgeon. Okay, they're different. Let's talk about that. You get the point. As a boundary setter, what you then say is, hey, Matt, I want to take about 3 minutes and have what is probably an uncomfortable conversation. 3 minutes, not 30 minutes. Because I need to set some boundaries for what I am willing and not willing to do as your mentor. And I think it might be uncomfortable because I'm just going to talk straight. But in 4 minutes, it'll be less comfortable, I promise. And by the way, Matt, you may also have some boundaries for me. Let me be very clear that as your mentor, I don't want to be mistaken as your champion, your ally, your reference, or your sponsor. Those are different roles that I'm not comfortable doing. Mentorship is different than that. You'll have other people that will play the role of champion, ally, and sponsor. I also want to make sure that we don't ever confuse my skills as therapist, counselor, or mentor, therapist or counselor. Mentorship is different. Now, I'm married. I have 3 sons. I've been a leader, so I have some expertise in relationships, but I don't have a certificate or a PhD. So let's be thoughtful about where my skills end. One other thing, Matt, I think it's important for you to know that my reputation is deeply connected to my network. I've spent 40 years carefully curating a very valuable network of people. And I would hate for you to be embarrassed or make me uncomfortable asking for any connections that I'm not willing to make. So upfront, I would ask that you stay far from asking me to set you up with my network. Most people know it's fairly significant given my high profile role as an author and podcaster. So let's make sure we don't find ourselves in those territories. Good fences make good neighbors. You get the point, right? Off script. And then I would invite my mentee to say, hey, so what boundaries you have? Now, they're probably so frightened, couldn't even put 2 words together. But I think it's important that you don't only set the boundaries, that they set them as well. Now, your boundaries might also be, I need you to be on time. I need you to be on camera. I need you to not be in your car. I need you to be prepared. I need you to have a 3-point agenda, not 9 points, 3 points. I need you to make and keep commitments. And if you say you're going to do X, I need you to do it and show up to do it. And so will I. The boundary setter, I think, is something that people abdicate too frequently in life, but as a mentor, because we know clear is kind from Brene Brown. Clear is kind. We also know that nearly all, Matt, if not all conflict in life comes from mismatched or unfulfilled expectations. So as the boundary setter, by the way, you can do this in a soft voice. You can add some, frivolity to it. It doesn't need to be your opening salvo as you come out of the gate. Hi, Matt, nice to meet you. First, let me set my boundaries. No, that's called no EQ, right? But I do think early on in the relationship, you ought to set some fences up so that you're not in a position where your mentee thinks you're going to fund their business or you're going to refer them to the big celebrities, going to get them Taylor Swift tickets. No, no, and triple no. Hell, I can't get Taylor Swift tickets. I literally just hung up with a call with someone who asked me in my vast network that I have someone who had a box in Chicago that might be able to give them a free seat to the Taylor Swift. And I'm like, is that you punking me? Are you punking me? I'm more likely to get you to the White House than I am to the Taylor Swift conference. Trust me. Anyway, I do think that role is very important for everyone to play, balancing courage with a level of diplomacy that may not always be natural to people.
That's fantastic.
Should I keep going?
Oh, please. Yes.
No, do you have a question on that or comment, please?
Well, not so much on that, but, and I don't want to divert, but, you mentioned entrepreneurship and, mentorship and entrepreneurship. I think, both of those I think are really important. And I think a lot of times when we're talking about mentorship, it makes people think rightly or wrongly about the larger organizations because they do have formal programs and a lot of times you need that formal guidance to maneuver this large organization. But I'm really interested in your perspective on mentorship when it comes to those smaller businesses, the entrepreneur with say 10, 20, 50, 100, 200 employees.
Yes.
How do you work that in and where do you see that in those?
Arguably more crucial than larger organizations because you don't have the established systems and processes that you might have at an Oracle or a Disney or a Delta Airlines, right? Things are a little more mom and pop and they get done with, ingenuity and resourcefulness and initiative. And so I'd argue that in smaller organizations, mentorship is more necessary because you got to figure out how to get stuff done here. The culture is often driven by the owner or the entrepreneur, and they may not always be sane, or they may not always be great culture builders, but they're genius business builders. So I think in smaller companies, it's imperative you have some kind of mentorship initiative. I also philosophically don't think your boss should be your mentor. That happens rarely and occasionally, but I don't think you should say, hey, Matt, welcome to your new employee, Scott. Also, by the way, be his mentor. No, I think you need someone else in the organization that can help you figure out how to get stuff done here. How do personalities work? What's the priority? How do I differentiate between what is urgent and important? The boss says everything is urgent. Tell me about her personality and style. That's not called gossip. That's called mentorship. So I would argue that everyone needs a mentor in the organization, including the C-suite. Maybe you match them with a member of the board of directors that are coaching them on their interpersonal skills, on how to be trustworthy, on how they communicate well or don't, their level of transparency or vulnerability, whether they seem like the genius in the room versus the genius maker of others in the room. So that doesn't cost any money.
Yeah.
Just, put people in a pot, pick out their names and match them. Now, that might be a little bit unconventional, not the right way to do it, but I think you could mix people up for 3 or 4 month stints and say, I'd like everyone to be mentoring each other on what success looks like in this company. There may be defined formula, there may not. But to your question, I think that's where mentorship is the most viable, especially with the average career age now.
Yeah.
Coming in as younger, the tenure is smaller. People move around like they dated in junior high school. I mean, that's not an indictment. That's just the values are different now. If you want people to stay, they need to be connected. They need to have a reason to stay. They need to feel like they could thrive in the company. And so you might be especially proud of your systems and your structures, but they're probably not as clean, as clear as you think they are. And giving people a mentor in the company to help them figure out how to get stuff done and succeed here is important. Because getting stuff done and succeeding is different in every organization. Rarely do those strategies match.
Well, let me ask you. I mean, and when we're talking about people moving, the younger kind of I'd say younger employees now, they tend to move a lot faster than
Sure.
and transition to different companies faster. And there's financial benefits to that, and fine. But what advice would you give them in terms of mentorship if they're constantly moving? How should they go about finding that mentor that might help them as they go from company to company?
It's a complicated question because first it assumes it's a good thing to go from company to company, right? I mean, I've just written a book called Career on Course. It's the yellow book behind me. It launches in 2024. And I believe that everyone should have a very intentional strategy for their career. Now, there'll be serendipity, but you ought to have a multi-decade strategy, not just you're jumping for 1% more commission or beer tap on Thursdays or the skate park. I think you should be really thoughtful around picking your job based on your leader, not picking your job based on the product or compensation. But I argue your number one lens through which you select a job is who you're working for, not what or where, but who, because your leader is going to be the biggest influence on you. And there might be another leader in the company that could be your mentor. So maybe in this organization, you're being mentored on your leadership skills or your communication skills. The next company you're being mentored are your technical skills or your business acumen. Have a thoughtful process about it and find someone that's well respected in the company and go ask them, could you be my mentor? Now, most people, when they hear that, they think, oh crap, that seems like a lot of time. And so if I was searching for a mentor, to your question, I would come in and say, hey, Matt, nice to meet you. I saw you at the town hall last week. I just started here 3 weeks ago. I've asked around and you seem to be someone super credible here. I have a question to ask you. Before you say no, let me finish. You seem to be one of the people here that really knows what goes on here, how stuff gets done, how careers are built, how they implode, how people get promoted, how people become influential. Would you be willing to mentor me on how to have a great career here? I'm suggesting maybe it's 4 or 5 meetings. Maybe it's, every 2 weeks for 30 minutes, not 38 minutes, not every week. But would you be willing to give me maybe a total of 4 or 5 hours of your time over the next 3 or 4 months to mentor me? So what I've done is I've been very specific, right? How to have a great career here. I asked for 4 or 5 hours over the next 4 months. I didn't say, will you mentor me for the rest of my 5 years here, right? Because people are busy and time is their most precious asset. And honest to God, most people want to give back. They want to lift others. They want to mentor. They just don't know what that means or how much time is that. And will I cancel and disappoint them? Make it clear, Matt, I want 4 30-minute sessions from you over the next 4 months. I'll come prepared. Here's my topic. Most people will say, sure, I can do that.
Yeah, no, I'd be hard pressed to say no to that. That was a really nice, clean offer, and I'm flattered. Sure, and maybe we do it over lunch. And so,
Right.
everybody's got to eat, right? So,
And maybe if I do my job as a mentee, maybe Matt decides to lengthen it. Maybe he decides to be my champion, be my ally, be my referral. I didn't ask him to be, but if I play my cards right as the mentee, my real goal is to make Matt my biggest champion. And the next time a director position comes up, Matt's on the executive team says, "Hey, have you met that guy Scott over in marketing? I mean, I've been kind of mentoring him off record, off formal, and I really like some of his thoughts. I mean, I think that's what your goal is. You don't express that, but if you're a savvy mentee, my job is to crush it with Matt and make him my biggest ally. I didn't ask him to be my ally. I earned my way into it by being on time, precise, well spoken. Don't confuse my emotions with facts. I'm really credible with them. I choose my words carefully. Read the book. I teach you how to be a great mentee through the process of great mentorship.
yeah, and I love that because I think so often people conflate champion for mentor, and they're like, hey, I just expected you to go to bat for me. I mean, like when there was an opportunity for promotion, I thought you'd be in the room, championing for me, right? Kind of getting me that job.
Well,
And
no,
that's
Matt.
not the case.
No, Matt, because if you remember in our second session, I somewhat awkwardly, very clearly said, hey, don't take offense, but I'm agreeing to be your mentor. There's no correlation between that and me becoming your champion or ally. I think most people will be taken aback by that. This is why you should deliver very thoughtfully. Don't be offended about that. These are very different roles. Champion and mentor are not the same, just like orthodontist and attorney aren't the same.
Yeah, no, and I think that's great that you point out because it actually gives it value to distinguish it as something that, like respect, is earned. It's not granted just because I'm going to help you. So that doesn't mean I'm going to open every door and be that person. You've got to earn that. And I love that you really set that clearly in the book. And I think now it's actually really cool to get to hear you say it in your own words versus just what's in the book. In the book is great, but this was fantastic. So let's switch just a little bit, if we could, into the leadership portion, because I like to focus on smaller business, and I think that corporate culture, as you kind of hinted on earlier, is so very important. And I think adding that mentoring to it, I think, and I'm curious what your view on this is. I think a lot of the problem that businesses are experiencing with quiet quitting is that they lack the corporate culture of really truly valuing their employees and giving them that environment that is there to nurture them. And I personally, not to go off on my own thing, but I think that business, when people say it's not personal, it's business, bull crap. There's nothing more personal than business. That's how you take care of yourself. You feed your family with business. Business is very personal. So if you're creating a culture that is conducive to a happy, healthy environment where people can grow and strive, I think that combats this quiet quitting. But you're kind of you're much more of an expert on all of this, the theories, the strategies, the modern time. What is your take on the quiet quitting, the corporate culture? Am I conflating things? What's your take?
Yeah. No, I think you're right on. I think for a while, culture became a buzzword, and it was something that the CEO had to account to his or her board, no matter how big the company was. Oh, it's not a nice to have now. It is a crucial aspect of people's satisfaction engagement. I mean, you look at the people you interview now for jobs, if they're savvy, they want to know two things. Who will I be reporting to and what is she like? And what is the culture in this organization like? And I'd like to go talk to some other people and learn about it. The pandemic wreaked carnage on this world. 1 million people died in the US. It's not debatable. I know 2 of them that died. What it also did was it reset everybody's values in life. Everybody's values are reshifted, right? What's important. And I think most people came out of this realizing that they don't want to work for a jerk. They don't want to do meaningless work. They don't want to just work for a paycheck. Or if they do, they compartmentalize it. And they realize that their avocation is not their vocation. And you're never going to get them to give their heart because they're working for just a paycheck, and you're not going to change that person likely. It's a small percentage of the world, especially in the Western Hemisphere for capitalists. People want now to know that what they're doing is meaningful, that they're adding something of significance back, that their time is limited, right? Whether they're religious or spiritual or agnostic or whatever, they want to know that their time here is meaningful. And so every leader, listen up. Oh, you have a culture, and it was created very intentionally, good or bad. And your culture is, in essence, how the vast majority of people behave the vast majority of time. If most of your people gossip and backbite and nitpick and criticize and diminish others, that's your culture. If your culture is one where people are loyal to the absent, they don't speak disparagingly about people behind their back, but they have tough, high courage conversations. They give both reinforcing and redirecting feedback, and they are all vulnerable in their own strengths and weaknesses, then that is your culture. Culture is set very intentionally by the leaders and their behaviors, period. So what you should be doing, leaders, owners, founders, you should be sitting down with your core leadership group, deciding what are the behaviors we want to model, because what we do gets replicated. If we want our company to stop being a gossip culture, then none of us can ever gossip ever again. If we want people to start receiving feedback, then every one of us has to demonstrate that we are open to feedback on our own skills, and we don't deflate it, deflect it, dispute it, deny it. We just say, thanks, Matt. Ouch, that was hurt. That hurt. But thank you. Thanks for sharing that with me. Tell me more about that. Like when I'm doing that, what do you think is going on with me? Or any number of other behaviors, right? And every one of your leaders has to model those behaviors. And all my leadership books you see behind me, I'm somewhat unpopular in the leadership business because I don't think everyone should be a leader of people. Just like not everyone should be an anesthesiologist or a commercial airline pilot, not everyone should be a leader of people. And if you are, then you have to very specifically model all those behaviors that you want to see in your team. And it's exhausting. And it's more exhausting post-pandemic because people are watching you more carefully because their options are greater. People aren't hostages anymore. They can move around, but they don't move around when they find a leader who loves them and a culture that they can thrive in. And those things do not happen accidentally. They happen very purposefully. But I would argue that as a leader, depending upon where you are in your company, what level, founder, owner, whatever, I'd argue that the technical expertise you bring to your organization, the skill set you bring that's technically, it's second to your ability to develop relationships. This is the number one skill every leader needs. These are power skills, not soft skills. The ability to have high courage conversations, the ability to offer apologies, the ability to admit when you're wrong, the ability to call someone aside and give them feedback on their blind spots in a way that does not diminish their self-esteem or their self-confidence, but raises their loyalty. These are the number one skills that leaders bring to their jobs, because people don't quit bad jobs. They quit bad bosses and corrupt cultures. And it sounds like a pithy human resource statement, but it's absolutely true.
Oh, I completely agree. And I think, much like, I think you're right with the pandemic, how it changed people's values. I think much like a recession is actually a good thing because it helps businesses and people trim the fat and make sure that the strong survive. And if you weren't strong, you're not going to survive, right? If you're not, you weren't doing things well enough, your business might have just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Fine, it could have been the greatest business ever. But if it can't survive the recession, let alone a depression, it might not be the right business. And so I think you're right. And I think that's, if you will, it's almost a human recession or a culture, corporate culture recession, kind of effect that the pandemic had where, yeah,
No, sorry, please continue.
Yeah, no, where that's what, people now come through that and they're like, you know what, you're right. I want to work for a good company, and you get people like, not to pick on him because Elon Musk is, a genius, a brilliant, but I wouldn't want to work for one of his companies, because but love him. He's going to get us to Mars. I love his car. We've got 3 of his cars. I think he creates fantastic products, but I don't think that he creates fantastic corporate cultures. And I think it's got to be very hard to work for somebody like that. And I, like you said, it bleeds down. That culture is created from the leadership. So I think it's really interesting. So to your point,
I don't buy his products. I don't invest in his companies, and I don't probably respect those that tolerate his leadership style because I think he is a train wreck when it comes to understanding interpersonal relationships and people and responsibility, with deference to his technical genius. I know that's a strong statement coming from a Scott Miller to Elon Musk. I am super passionate and intentional about all your listeners. For those of you that have a business in the cyber world, the technology world, the digital world, you likely are creative geniuses, and your technical competency would make my SAT score look really embarrassing, or ACT, I guess. But you need to develop your relationship skills. This is why people will come to work with you, because they feel respected, they feel heard, they feel seen, they feel valued, they feel like their contribution matters, that they trust you enough to earnestly ask for feedback on their blind spots. It's why most people don't get feedback, is because they've proven they're incapable of accepting it and implementing it. So as a leader, you've got to model that. You've got to model that you actually ask for feedback. And here's the problem in this. Most people won't give their boss feedback. What a quick way to create a career cul-de-sac. Tell their boss that their town hall slide deck sucked. Oh yeah, boss, it was the 28th slide with the longitudinal study from Harvard. That was the one that you crushed it. No, it sucked. Boss, you ought to have a fireside chat, have someone interview you. Don't get up there for 2 hours and show me a card deck or slide deck. You need to model all of the behavior you want to see in your people. It's extraordinarily valuable advice if you want to build a culture where people choose to come and choose to stay and choose to give their all.
Well, and
I don't understand quiet quitting. Quiet quitting, first of all, I don't understand it. I know what it is, but no one that works for me is quiet quitting, because I'm constantly, as a leader, focused on what is their level of engagement. And I can't change that. What I can change is the culture. I can change the conditions where people choose a higher level of engagement. I also can create the conditions where they choose a lower level of engagement and, I guess, start quiet quitting or quit or sabotage, or worse, quit but stay. The leader creates the conditions for people to choose a high or low level of engagement.
That's brilliant. And I think when you look at the history of the tech world, right? You get these tech geniuses, who were not necessarily social geniuses, and yet their products, created huge businesses around them. And as that grew out in Silicon Valley and became, more and more prolific, and you get these massive corporate cultures where their idea of taking care of employees were nap pods and having cool food, and okay, cool, and the office is cool as hell, it's fantastic, but that is so surface level. They don't get to what you're talking about here, and because they stay stuck in this I don't think calling it a tech culture is fair to technology, but let's call it a tech culture instead of a human focused culture. And maybe that's it. It's a tech focused culture, not a human focused culture, which I think is what you're saying, and it's hugely important. So
I would advise them to say, maybe you need to be the chief technology officer and founder and owner, and then you need to hire someone more like me to build the culture so that people choose to stay, choose to thrive, choose to refer their friends in, right? They choose to bring their best talent. That's the ultimate compliment, right? Is when someone says to their friends, you should apply for a job here. That's the ultimate measure of high engagement.
Yeah, totally agree. Scott, I could keep this up all day, and I know you are a super busy man with, and I still don't know how you do it. All the books, all the podcasts, it's absolutely spectacular. But this is a fantastic book. If you could tell folks where they can find out, where they can buy your book, where they can find out more about you.
Yeah, so the book is The Ultimate Guide to Great Mentorship, is in softcover, audio, and digital. You can buy it anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, independent bookstores. You can visit greatmentorship.com. That's the website where there's additional videos and mentor kits and a mentor certification process on there as well. I look forward to my next book out called Career on Course, comes out in February. 10 strategies to take your career from accidental to intentional. And then I've got a couple more, as you would expect, in the pipeline beyond that. So I appreciate the spotlight today. Thank you, Matt.
Oh, thank you. And, of course, I'd love to have you back when your new book comes on.
I love you, man.
Awesome. I'll hold you to it. Not that I could, but I'd love to. And this was such a treat. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
Sir.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.